published 0722s, the 24th of November 2017, updated 0947s, the 24th of November 2017. He has traveled to 852 places across the globe, including all 193 United Nations territories and even North Korea. And after reaching Conway Reef off the coast of Fiji, U.S. man Don Parrish has been named as the world's most-traveled man. To get to the remote spot, which is 280 miles from the main islands, Mr. Parrish chartered a boat along with another traveler, retired American Don Parrish, who has been named as the world's most-traveled man, according to the website Most Traveled People. He is pictured in Bosaso in Somalia with his security guards for the trip. In 2007, Mr. Parrish met with the Ashanti King during a visit to Ghana, which he says is one of his most memorable moments, and it certainly wasn't the first time he had hired his own boat, as he has visited 60 islands by ship, as that is the only way to get there. His incredible journey to Conway Reef is one of hundreds, which has seen him visit all 26 cantons in Switzerland, all 16 states in Germany, and all 85 political subdivisions in Russia over 13 visits. His trip to North Korea even made front-page news, as he was one of the first U.S. tourists in the country for a number of years. Making it as number one requires extreme dedication, and as Mr. Parrish himself acknowledges, some suffering. The 73-year-old, who lives just outside Chicago, started traveling after spending the summer of 1965 in Germany working in a metal factory. It was his first time abroad, bar a day trip to Mexico. Now he joins other extreme travelers in reaching parts of the world most of us can only dream of. In 2011, Mr. Parrish made it to the geographic South Pole on the 100th anniversary of its discovery. Mr. Parrish poses with his security guard in North Korea. His visit to the country made headline news in the U.S. He has also been to Easter Island, Somalia, Curacao, Madagascar, and even the narrowest part of the Khyber Pass between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And he stood on the Arctic Circle in Finland. Now retired, he worked hard in telecommunications and saved his money to be able to take trips around the globe. Most of the places left on Don's list to visit are remote islands, including the Bounty Islands, the Scott Islands, and Paracel Islands, which are difficult to reach. He is also yet to reach Guantanamo Bay. In 2013, the 73-year-old experienced a walking safari tour with lions while in Mauritius. Mr. Parrish, pictured in 2015 riding an elephant across the landscape while on a trip to Sri Lanka. An owl perches on top of Mr. Parrish's arm as he poses for the camera outside Conway Castle in Wales. Mr. Parrish's extreme travel means that he is one of only 23 people who have completed the Traveler Century Club, visiting the 325 countries or territories on its list. He is also currently joined top of the Most Traveled People Club, a club for travelers who aspire to go everywhere. And Mr. Parrish, who has never married and has no children, said, "I spent the summer of 1965 in Germany working as an unskilled laborer in a metal factory. I lived with a family. What made this a transformative experience is that I refused to speak a word of English." Mr. Parrish, pictured at Conway Reef close to Fiji. He had to charter a boat in order to reach the remote island. It is a good way to get over the idea that the world revolves around yourself. As part of that summer, I took a vacation for about 8 or 9 days with a German group into France on a camping trip. My first trip around the world was in 1971. I still have a copy of my air ticket. This was a very expensive trip for me at the time, the cost of a new car. But to see all of these wonders of the world, cultures, cities in a span of just 6 weeks was another transformative experience. Easter Island is one of the must-visit places for a serious traveler. I was there about 6 years ago and there are so many restrictions. I was so lucky to see it in 1994 too. Mr. Parrish in 1971 with a group of travelers at Gandhi's grave in India. In 2006, Mr. Parrish was part of a small group that visited the narrowest part of the Khyber Pass between Pakistan and Afghanistan. In 1976, I rode an ostrich in South Africa and did a flying dismount, which got me the only standing ovation of my life. I was at the South Pole on its 100th anniversary. I have been outside the U.S. for about 11 years, about 250 trips. I have also traveled for a year or so in the U.S. while I visited all 50 states. I like to see the real place where things happened and I like making connections. I travel by myself, with one person, with a few people, small group, large group, with driver and guide. I live frugally, no smoking, no coffee, old cars, and I have spent my life savings. Not every trip is smooth sailing, and Mr. Parrish says traveling at night in remote places is one of the most dangerous parts of the journeys he makes. The world's most traveled man poses with the wildlife while on a trip to Madagascar in 2009. He added, in 2010 I visited Bosaso, Puntland, Somalia. My travel agent refused to help me because he thought I would get kidnapped. So I requested security from the local guy the first used to plan this trip. The word security got translated into 4 armed guards who stayed in their own room at the hotel and even followed me from my room to the computer room when I did email at 11 p.m. at night. I visited North Korea with 4 others, and since we were the first American tourists in North Korea for 2 or 3 years, the Los Angeles Times had a front-page story on the 5 of us. To be in the tribal areas of Pakistan required us to have a rifleman for our protection. It took us 9 days to get from Cape Town to Marion on a small sailing vessel with a 4-man crew and 4 passengers. There was no shower on the ship. We experienced stormy seas. People were seasick. There were no chairs to sit on, only benches. That was the one time that I thought I might not make it mentally. Well, Mr. Parrish acknowledges there have been dangerous times and some hair-raising moments. There have been a whole host of unique moments along the way too. While visiting the Congo in 2007, he met with the then Miss Europe Alexandra Rosenfeld, left. In February 2017, Mr. Parrish became one of only 23 people who have completed the Traveler Century Club, visiting the 325 countries or territories on its list. Pictured right as his trophy, he said in 2007, "I was in Ghana with my German guide, Herbert Goebbels. And we attended the court of the Ashanti king. I also met the beautiful Alexandra Rosenfeld, Miss Europe of 2006, while on my travels in Congo." But despite being well-traveled, when asked where his favorite place in the world is, Mr. Parrish, who said he has no plans to retire from traveling, replied, "My favorite place is the one I have been to most. It's called home." Mr. Parrish's impressive travels mirror that of Canadian Mike Spencer Bone, who spent 23 years traveling the globe and visiting 195 countries. His marathon odyssey took him from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe and every nation in between. He was the first ever tourist in war-torn Mogadishu. He hitchhiked through Saddam Hussein's hometown during the U.S. invasion of Iraq and lived with pygmies in the Congo.